Recap. So excited that you can be with us today. It is myself, Marwan, and Minister Hank. How you doing there, Mr.
Oh, I
Hank?
can't complain. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be here.
I got to sound like those, those people on TV. Yeah, hey, it's a good time. Hey, look at me. No, really, it actually is a pleasure because I'm getting to explore an avenue that I didn't see before.
All right. Well, what I'm asking you to do is just keep your volume up, if
Okay,
and then that way you probably won't have to hold the mic,
okay,
which would be good. You just got to keep that high energy. You got to project to the back, so you want to make
okay.
sure that Brother AJ can hear everything that we're saying.
Talk
Go
to
ahead and
the
type a
crowd.
one in the chat if we're coming through good. And then we'll go ahead and get started. We've got a great hour for you in store. Hopefully, you caught the sermon. If you didn't, you can go over to New Horizon Ministries and you can check out uh, the spoken word, the preached word. I don't know why I want to say spoken word. I think it's Black history and poetry, and
Hey,
you know,
same thing though.
it's the same thing.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah. For people of color, when we have expression, spoken word is the way that we say it to be politically correct.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put up the verses today. We were preaching from, or you were preaching from, Second Corinthians chapter 3, verses 1 through 5.
Correct.
And we're going to go ahead and put that and scroll that on the bottom. I'm going to read it, and then I'll
Oh,
have you kind of
okay.
recap your sermon quickly, and then we'll
Okay.
get into it. All right. So Second Corinthians 1 through 5. Are we beginning to praise ourselves again? It's a question. Are we like others who need to bring you letters of recommendation or who ask you to write such letters on their behalf? Surely not. The only letter of recommendation we need is you yourselves. Your lives are a letter written in our hearts. Everyone can read it and recognize our good work among you. Clearly, you are the letter from Christ showing the result of our ministry among you. This letter is written not with pen and ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. It is carved not on tablets of stone, but on human hearts. We are confident of all this because of our great trust in God through Christ. It is not that we think we are qualified to do anything on our own. Our qualification comes from God. And that is the reading there. Uh, this was a good one.
Well, thank you. I think it has its elements.
I see what you did there. The elements kind of
Well, I think it
came.
has its elements because when you read the scripture, Paul makes a declaration, and the declaration says written, known, and read of all men.
Written, known, and read.
You're right.
Okay.
Well, if we do a synopsis of written, known, and read, he's saying that for my witness, if I call to the stand someone to validate my testimony, I have written proof, I have understood known truth, and I have exemplary components that you can read for yourself. And when you start to read for yourself, we fall into the doctrine of res ipsa loquia, a Latin proverb which says it speaks for itself. This is what Paul is saying here when he was being, I guess, rebuked, chastised, or treated indifferently because someone said he need to clarify to them by what means he speak, as John did when brothers was sent for the Pharisees in John 1 and asked him um, by what claim do he preach the doctrine of baptism. And sometimes you have to verify to the people you're dealing what gives you the right to talk, not just the opportunity.
All right. Well, why don't you summarize your preached word today, and then we'll get into some dialogue.
Okay.
And Brother AJ, while Minister uh, Hank is doing that, will you kind of respond to folks in the chat for us? So, what was it about? What was this about
This was about that
for you? You know,
for
because you're
me.
summarizing your sermon, right?
For me, prior to me changing the idea over from res ipsa loca, it was what is your story? What's your story? Occasionally, we get in trouble. We are brought before the mom or the dad, whoever does the discipline in the house, and we were told, "Okay, justify to me why you shouldn't get a whooping." This is what.
That sounds like a trick question.
Well, it is because if you get it wrong, you still get a whooping. If you don't, you don't get a whooping.
Right, but as a child, we don't typically know the right answer. You know, that sounds
Well,
like a trick. That's like go out and get a switch.
hey, now.
Should
When
I
you
get
go
a
out and get
thick
a
one?
switch, no, when you go out and get a switch, it's over. They ain't no justification. Now you getting a whooping.
Right, but you can get into more trouble depending on what switch you go and
Right.
get.
Well, and how many times you got to go back and get another one
And
until
that
we
seemed like
finish?
a trick too,
Yeah.
right?
No. My mama told me, says, let's make it easy on yourself. Get a good one. That way we won't have to be here all day. You know. And one day she told me, well, this hurts me more than you. I said, excuse me? How can that hurt you more than me? And I'm the one get beat up. Now that day, I didn't get a whooping. So you have to understand that when I heard that, it wasn't a negative thing.
Hmm.
It was just a okay. Okay, tell me. We call it justification,
Okay.
not according to the scriptures, but justification according to the dialogue that you've been put in. Paul is saying here that someone is telling him he needs to justify his action, and Paul said, "No, I don't need to say a word." The proof that the Corinthians had changed their life. If you heard the sermon, you heard me talk about the Corinthians were noted to be naughty by nature. One brother had went into his dad's new wife, and he was boasting at the church. Now, if you're supposed to be a Christian, if you're not married, you shouldn't be having fornication. Yet this brother was boasting about how great he was, and he was a Christian. And Paul rebuked him, said that ain't good.
Mm.
That's not good.
All right.
So here Paul is being accosted. I think the better word is he's been accosted about his speech. According to some theologians, Paul didn't look like a very eloquent, powerful person. It was believed that he was somewhere between 4 feet 8 and 5 feet 3, and maybe 150 pounds, if that. So he wasn't big in stature. And he wasn't great in looking, and they said he's kind of had a little dwarfism issue. So he wasn't pleasant to the eyes. So they were saying to him, "You don't look like Apollos, who was eloquent in speech and da da da." But Paul was actually keen on speech because his use of the language was unexemplified. No one could touch him. He had 13 different languages, so he was well versed
Mm.
wherever he went. He didn't have to speak in his native tongue. He could speak in the tongue of the group he went to. So he didn't need a translator. He could speak for himself.
Well, let me say, one of the things that I appreciate about you is your depth and understanding of the Bible more than just the verse in and of itself.
Okay.
Right? You have context that you can add, right?
Okay.
Which I think is really powerful. But if you will, transition and just talk about what was your sermon about. Get the
My
highlights of that.
my sermon highlights was that, are you the witness that you should be?
Mm.
When it all boils down, the letters of recommendation, the letters of commendation, all depicts whether or not Paul was authentic in what he presented. At the end of the day, no matter what I call myself a Christian or not, am I, is what they see what they get? If it's not, then there's a disconnect between the ideal me in the Johari window
Mm-hmm.
and the real me in the Johari window and the unknown me in the Johari window.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and pull this Johari window up. We talked about that a little bit last week.
Right.
And we promised you we would bring it up this week
Mm-hmm.
so we can have that for some context here, which I love, right? Let me find that. Where did I put that thing at? All right, here it goes. So just quickly, and then let me take this little scroller off so you can see the bottom of it. So the Johari window, as you can see here, has four quadrants. In that upper left-hand corner is what's known to yourself and what is also known to others, right? And that's the main arena. To the right would be what others know about you, but what you don't know about yourself, your blind spot, right? Oftentimes we have folks that'll tell us something about ourselves that we don't see in ourselves, or maybe we even refuse to recognize it, but it's there. It's our blind spots, right? You always do this, or you don't do that. Quadrant three, which is in the bottom left hand corner, is what you know, but what you don't let others know, right? Your facade. And certain cultures, you want to save face, right?
Right.
They
The
allow you to
mask.
save face. What is the facade that you put out to
Right.
others, right?
The
You
mask.
could be in a bad mood, but you're putting on a smile, right? It's a facade. That's not how you feel,
Mhm.
but that's how you want to present. That's how you want others to see you.
Right.
And then that quadrant four is what's not known to yourself and what's not known to others, right? It's just unknown,
Right.
right? So this is the Johari window. So we're kind of just going through that again, you know, summarizing this sermon. Talk about that Johari window. Let me let you continue where you were.
That Johari window asks me to examine myself,
Mm.
to look inward. Normally we say to others, well, you ain't nothing but an old hound dog. Well, number one, do you really know what a hound dog is? Number two, how are you using a hound dog? And number three, is it really applicable? When I look at myself, do I see what God sees me as? Or do I see what the people sees me as? Or am I confused on all of the above? The known side of me may not be what God sees me as. So in reality, the picture I present of myself ain't the real me.
Mm.
It's not. It's a good picture, but it's not the real me. It's a good mask that when you see me, you perceive me to be this, i.e., a Christian, i.e., Pentecostal, i.e., Baptist, i.e., Presbyterian, i.e., Lutheran. And as Miles Monroe would say, or as psychologists would say, anytime you use a label, you have some incorrect pictures because the individual looking has their own lens that individual is looking through, which may not present you in the true light of what you are because of their lenses. This scripture, 2 Corinthians 3 1 through 5, asks me to examine myself.
Well, why is that important?
Well, um, there's a known preacher by the name of Bishop Noel Jones. And some years back, he was preaching and he said that these were exact words. He said, I didn't know that I didn't know that I didn't know that I didn't know that I didn't know. Now, it sounds like rhetoric when you listen to it, but each one of those I didn't know was based on some information that he discovered of himself
Okay.
in a particular fashion. And when he discovered of himself, the unknown became known. And when the unknown become known, I can now work or use it to move forward. Example, last week we was talking and you said to me, how did we get down this rabbit hole? Now it sounds bad, yet it's not. You have to recognize sometimes you're going down the rabbit hole. It's not that the information is bad, it's just out of place.
Mm.
So you have to recognize what are your idiosyncratic processes
Right.
that either prohibit, inhibit, or stop your witness. Because if you don't know that, you'll continue to present the bad you not knowing.
All right. So let me tell you what I got from this. And
Okay.
so what was really interesting is I left during the sermon to take Brother D to work. And he and I are having a conversation. And I was saying some things to him
Mhm.
that you were preaching about. And on the way back, I caught back up with the sermon.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, that's something else. This is crazy. I'm talking to this gentleman about the same thing that you're preaching about.
Okay.
But we're not together. I didn't know what you were going to say. I know what you were going to preach. I thought that was, quite the coincidence.
Now, do you recall the particularities or do you just call it general?
Well, I'm going to go into it now,
Okay.
right? Because I'm going to tell you what I got out of the service. But I
Okay.
just wanted to bring that up in my notes that I took. And again, for those of us that or those of you who may be watching us for the first time, this is the No Cap recap. And so what happens is New Horizon Ministries has their service on Saturdays to make it accessible to everyone. And there's the preach word. And then after we dialogue about that preach word, and I come from it from more of a secular side, right? I believe that this resource here, this Bible, can be very impactful and powerful in people's lives, whether or not they're using it for its intended purpose.
Okay.
And so a lot of folks are struggling, searching, wanting, and they're looking everywhere for it, right? Social media, social media influencers, the news, friends, family, whatever. Uh, and a lot of people have turned away from this for various reasons, right? I mean, right now it's being vilified, uh, quite frankly. But also, folks have had a bad experience, right? So I'm not going to look at that.
They're shy from it.
I'm not going to, I can't see any benefit
Okay.
in there. I can't derive anything from it. So they're closed off from it they got hurt. But there's really good things in there. And so in that, when you were speaking, I have this saying that I would say to my students when I was teaching at the college, and I tell Pastor this all the time, and he hates it. He says he doesn't understand it. I would tell my students, put a piece of paper on the floor in front of you and look down and ask yourself, is what I'm doing serving my purpose? And if it's not, then that lets you know that you need to start working on your purpose, right? So oftentimes we're living life, we're doing our thing, but we start to stray away from what our mission is. What are our mission goals? I need to get more education. I need to make more money. I want to be a better, parent. I want to do whatever that is. Are you working on that right now? And a lot of times, if you're asking that question, the answer is likely to be no. You're doing something else that's counter. And that comes with knowing thyself.
Okay.
Are you on mission? Are you on task? Can you get back on task once you are self aware to realize that you're not on task? But if you're not checking, you're not going to know.
Correct.
And some people don't want to know.
Okay.
Right? So I thought this was really impactful. And so you had mentioned in your sermon, you said, if there was a videotape of your life
Yeah.
and you watched it back, how would you be judged? Right? And
Well,
I'm
if they
kinda
use
putting that on the screen for
my exact words were, if you were in court and they had a video presentation of what you used for witness, would it exonerate you or would it vilify you?
I plead the fifth.
I think that's what most of us want to do. However, we don't have that option.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It has to either make us condemn or exonerate.
Mm,
That's why Paul said, now unto them who are in Christ, there's no more condemnation. Romans 8:1. See, in chapter 7, he said, I got a problem. I'm trying to do good, but man, that guy on that left shoulder is really making it hard for me. Because why? I saw sister and she looked just too good, and next thing I know, I'm over there trying to get the digits and I'm married. I shouldn't be doing that. So I have to understand the real me.
mm-hmm.
I have to see where I'm at. I have to know myself, and knowing myself is beginning to explore what I'm doing. You brought up about those decision processes. We talked about last week. You said that was 4 steps. Actually, there's 5. The first part of the step is understanding that you have a challenge, not an issue. Issue is negative, challenge is positive. So you have a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
The minute you recognize you have a challenge, you have a decision to make. And that decision is, do I address it or do I ignore it?
Well, I thought step 2 was to go and get advisors.
Well, that's step 2. But see, the part 1 of the whole issue is I recognize I got a challenge, and then I recognize I want to do something about the challenge. That's
Right.
one piece by itself.
All right.
That's that 5th piece we didn't have. It has 2 parts to it.
Well, let's get through it real
Okay.
quick. So step 1 is you have a challenge. Step 2 is to get advisors. What was step 3?
Step 3 was to bring all the information together, take a look at it, analyze it.
Okay.
After you analyze, you interpret. And the last one is you make a decision. You move toward plus or minus whatever you decide on that decision. Yet I want to go back to the part 1 because we had 4, and then I realized that it's actually a 5th. And the 5th one, which is the first one, is a 2-part.
Okay.
I recognize I got a challenge, and I recognize I need to make a decision about the challenge. So if I don't know that I don't know that I don't know that I don't know that I don't know, when I become aware that I now know, that's where I have to take the second part is to say, do I wish to do anything about it?
Gotcha.
And from there, I get those other 4 steps and I move forward. The Johari window helps me learn of the unknown part of me as God revealed me to me,
Mm-hmm.
so I can become all that God has designed me to be. Because I can guarantee you, now this much I've learned in my years of being a church attendee, is that the picture I have of me is nowhere near as great as the picture that God has of me. Because the devil is fighting me to not see who I am. Because if I can not see who I am, I will never become what God wanted me to be, and the kingdom of God would suffer.
I chuckle. What I was telling Brother D was he was, well, actually, he wasn't joking. I asked him how he wanted to be addressed when I asked him to come up and read from was he reading the Old Testament?
Right.
And he said, King Demetrius. I said, all right. I said, that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
And so on our ride there, one of the things that I was saying to him is, I hate, the addressing each other with, hey, king, hey, queen.
Right.
I don't like it. And the reason why I don't like it is we don't typically act like royalty. We don't act and behave as kings and queens. Again, goes with this Johari window, right? You're not acting that way. And so,
yes.
it's not congruent in how I'm addressing you.
Oh, yes.
And, we talked about slavery and we talked about Jim Crow. We talked about, coming into knowledge. And I said, at the end, he looks at me and he says, oh, you're this and that. You seem to be this, finished, polished product. And I want to get there. And I said, being a king isn't the end goal. It's the destination.
Okay.
Right? It's the journey. While you're on your journey, are you doing king-like things?
Ooh,
Are you taking care of business? Are you being responsible? That's the royalty in you. And I said the trick is that when they had us enslaved, while they were keeping us down, they told us that we weren't that. And
Right.
so now we believe that. But now we're wound so tight, they could be hands off now.
Right.
Right? We'll destroy ourselves. And when I mean ourselves as in the collective, but also individually.
Okay.
Right? So your royalty, your kingship, your queenship comes from your own self knowledge and acknowledgement and being on your path. So it doesn't matter what you've done, right? You find yourself here today, right? So you were talking about that videotape. If you had a videotape, would you find yourself guilty?
Right.
Right? Well, yeah, you may have been guilty up until this day.
Correct.
Right? But now you're on this new journey and you're creating, you're living in real life, you know, well, podcast of your life,
Okay.
if you will, right? How does that come across as people are watching it as you're living now in the knowledge of you being on this path of change? I'm working toward a degree. I'm working at becoming a better parent. I'm working at whatever that goal is, right? To me, that's where the royalty is, right? How do you walk in that now? Not what you did in the past, because you can't undo what your past was, but you can use that knowledge and do better.
Now, since you use the term better,
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to one of my little cliches I have. The things that transpired in my life were to make me better, not bitter. So I take my experience, good, bad, or ugly, and I look at the positiveness of it versus the negativity of it. Both are the same thing, but it's how I view it. I'm gonna use.
Good. No, I'm gonna stop you there because I think that point is made.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want to go down that
Okay.
rabbit hole because that
Okay.
was getting ready to be a rabbit.
Yeah, that's a rabbit. Oh, that's a rabbit hole. Oh, that's a hole. Oh, that's a hole.
I can feel the hole.
Yeah, that's a hole.
But and you're correct. I agree with you 100%. Right? Is God watching the video of your life? How would you be judged? From the secular side of it, right? If you're watching your videotape, same as the piece of paper on the floor, and the Rev typed in the chat, he said he still doesn't get it. Is what I'm doing right now serving my mission? Am I studying? Am I reading the Bible? Am I fellowshipping?
Okay.
If it's on your side of the table, on my side of the table, I want to be a business owner,
Okay.
or I want to increase my sales. What am I doing to increase my sales? What kind of planning am I doing to create my business plan? Am I looking at a SWOT analysis, my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Am I doing these things?
Okay.
Right? Because if I'm doing something else, if I'm at the club, if I'm at the movies, if I'm just watching TV,
Okay.
then I'm not on mission, right?
You're not on task.
I'm not on task.
Okay.
Right? And so that's important. And so that Johari window, which I really like here, and I'm just showing that on the screen, if you could see that, Mr. Hank, is what areas do you fall short? And that's that blind spot that we can't see that maybe others can see. You might be able to see where I'm falling short, but I don't see it. So I've got to do some assessment, some analysis on where I could be falling short.
Well, in your observation of the people who's helping you figure out whether you with 10 can take care of 20, they're supposed to tell you that, I don't know if you know this is a blind spot for you.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk to you about this, you go this way. You go postal on us.
Well, hopefully not postal. I mean,
well,
that's pretty severe.
Well, I use the terminology in a kind of apologetic style, because you go down the route that you shouldn't go, because it hurts when you find out, oh, I'm not like what I thought it was.
You know, I think postal people everywhere probably do not like that analogy.
Well, hey,
I'm
I'm
not
sorry.
Going crazy. Like, why we got to get a bad rap?
Well, he just happened to be at the post office at the time, and he wasn't on the wall.
But you know, it hits both two sectors of the Johari window, right?
Right.
Not having that self knowledge, right, and then the unknown where both sides don't know. So there's a part where you don't know where I'm falling short because you don't know everything about me.
Right.
But there's parts where I don't know I'm falling short, because I can't see it, my blind spot.
Right.
And so that's important to ask yourself that question. And so now you've kind of summarized, what your intent was from the sermon. And so
Right.
now I'm giving back to you, kind of what I took from it. And from that, I came up with 3 questions.
Okay.
So what's important to me and why I like doing formats in this way is to give people some scaffolding, give them a blueprint, something that they can use to start making change in their life, right? What are you wanting to do? What do you want? What's your wish list?
Last week when I came in, I had on a clergy collar.
Mm-hmm.
And the clergy collar was saying my affirmation that I don't mind being known as a man of God,
Mm.
not necessarily a pastor, but a man of God. The collar I wore is a symbolism to the people who carry the word of God. So the first part of it is that do I accept what designation? Who do I call myself?
Okay.
See who am I
Mm-hmm.
when I look at the mirror in the mirror? What do I see when I look at when I do as Michael Jackson did? When I look in the mirror, what do I see in the mirror? What man do I see in the mirror?
So you saw a man wearing a collar.
Well, the collar is a representation to the known world of a person who is now, pardon the expression, in a religious concept.
Mm-hmm.
So the person you see with the collar on says to you, okay, that's one of them. Not necessarily is, yet that's a representation. See, and I followed up this week on the same thing because Paul was saying, hey, we don't accept your collar. We need a letter. We need some recommendation. So you got the collar on. Whoop dee. Yeah, but you ain't talking.
Woo.
You
All
ain't,
right.
so you ain't talking the Bible I know. You talking, but are you talking good stuff? See, now this is where it gets crunch time.
Mm-hmm.
Paul said, well, you gonna roll up on me and talk about if I ain't got no letter, you ain't listen? Dude, hey, what's this? Look at this. And you gonna talk noise to me? Because I don't have a collar on today? What changed? If what you see is what you get, it ain't changing no matter what happens.
So it don't matter whether you have the collar on or not.
Correct. But last week was a deformation for me because that's what I perceived that I needed to do, which is the reason why I wore the collar.
Gotcha.
So when you say, what am I wanting to do?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wanting to step forward and let the world know, hey, over here, if you got a question about Christ, go back to your question you asked last week. What does that mean to me? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
It's more than just a good book. Yet overall, it's a good book because if you start reading it, getting into your pictures and let your mind flow, God can talk to you. And when he talk to you, guess what? You won't be naked and afraid.
All right, now stop there because I want to stay on task
Yeah.
here. All right, so the first question is, what are you wanting to do? And you gave the example of the collar.
Right.
The second question, what are you willing to do?
Because
Because wanting to do something and willing to do it are 2 different things. I want to lose weight, but I'm not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to the gym.
Well,
right? So what were you willing to do? You were willing to take off the collar. What else were you willing to do? Since
well,
we're
I'm
using
take
your
on the
example.
collar, not take off the collar.
Taking on.
Right. Present the collar as a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to do the things that God reveals to me. In our lesson today, Paul was saying, you demand. God don't demand that. Paul was saying, you prefer. God don't prefer that. If you are a man of God and God have called you to be a man of God, you don't need certification from men.
Mm.
Now, if you have an affiliation you're working from, they may want something to verify who you are. Yet, if you're doing for God, and here's what the tricky part is, because there's tons of folks who say that I'm doing God's will.
Right.
And when we look at them, bro, we feel like reaching over, knocking us out the head and say, dude, you're lost. You're going down the wrong path.
Hmm.
You're not only down the rabbit hole, you're stuck in it.
Right.
You're stuck in it. And somebody's covering the dirt up.
Uh-oh.
You will never get out. So sometimes you have to recognize that. And part of of being willing to do is determine how you perceive that you need to capture the world that's in your presence.
Mm.
So I'm willing to do whatever it takes to become that.
Okay.
And keep in mind, it's not going to look like what everybody else see.
Nope, that's all right. We just talking about
Okay.
you.
Okay.
All right. So what are you going to do is the next question. What are you going to do?
I'm going to take a little bit more time and evaluate that piece of paper you threw on the floor
Hmm.
and see if I'm going to step on the paper and leave it dirty, or I'm going to pick the paper up and use it as a diagram to process a plan that I can put in black and white.
I think that, a lot of folks that I talk to
Mm-hmm.
that are finding themselves at a crossroads, whatever it is,
Right.
right? I need to make a change in my job or whatever the case may be. And I use that, education as,
Right.
as an example over and over. Don't know how to get started.
Okay.
Don't know how to really start that, the build that scaffolding
Okay.
to really make a plan, that measure twice and cut once,
Okay.
right? So it's they know what they want to do, but they don't ask themselves what are they willing to do.
Well, have you ever heard of the writer's wheel?
Mm-mm.
The writer's wheel is a circle with spokes on it.
Mm-hmm.
The spokes are ideals or thoughts. The hub holds it together. Depending on whether it's a 8-spoke wagon wheel, 10-spoke wagon wheel, 20-spoke wagon wheel, depends on how many things on the side of that you're going to work off of. And you list all of those things, and then you begin to gradually remove them and make sense out of them.
Right. That's great. What I'm saying is that people don't analyze that second step, right? They know what they want to do, but
Correct.
they don't think about what they're willing to do. Now, I don't want you to give me the solution in it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I'm just stating
Okay.
where they're having this disconnect
Okay.
and they're not seeing success,
Okay.
right? Because they're missing that second step, right? They know what they want to do,
Okay.
but they don't know what they're willing to do.
I'm using the blank piece of paper you put on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
On the piece of paper, use a writer's wheel, use a Johari window, use whatever you think you need to begin to fill the paper up with your thoughts.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then in the interpersonal communication class I used to take, they had they want you to do 3 lists of single words, 10 each.
Single word, 3 lists of 10 each.
Right.
So what are you talking about? Like what you want to do, what you're willing to do, and what you're gonna do?
Correct. So now,
Okay.
or whatever the ideal is, you have
Gotcha.
three.
Well, let's keep it with this idea.
Okay. So we got the three lists.
Mm-hmm.
You list down there in single syllable words. So they'd be hard to define the single syllable words. When you get through, that 30 words is supposed to become 10.
Mm.
So you have to cut down, cross out. You have to, it forces you to, you remember this? To analyze. Those 30 words are your observation words of single syllable things: willing, want, need.
All right. Now I'm gonna stop you there.
Okay.
Right. So, and again, what Minister Hank is saying is that there's different ways that you can do that.
Correct.
Right. So the writer's circle, the Johari window, there's
Right.
lots of different things that you can do. The columns,
Right.
which is what you're talking about now. Right. So find something that works for you. You've
Right.
just been given 3 examples of what you can do. You can also Google those things, right? And as we talked last week, step 2, which was go and seek your advisors, right? And have that conversation.
Family and friends, the MCI folks.
Yeah, or your mentors, and you
Right.
should have at least one mentor.
At least one.
At least one.
At least
right?
one.
Because you need mentors for different
Right.
sectors of your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? You might have a spiritual mentor, you might have an entrepreneurial mentor, you might have a mentor that, for parenting, you may have several. But I digress.
Before you digress, I want you to understand we don't all call them mentors.
Mm-hmm.
We call them close associates that we can talk with. So sometimes when we use the word mentor, too many times we conjure a different picture. And I want you to understand that those people in your life are there to help you make decisions by providing you with information that you can work with.
All right. And I'll only add to that because last week we talked about making sure that those people were actually of sound mind and body,
Mm-hmm.
because your immediate circle or who you go to may not be folks you should be taking advice from. And sometimes we go to folks that will give us the answer we want to hear.
Correct.
Which isn't helpful either. So whatever system you use, right?
Correct.
What are you wanting to do? And what are you willing to do? And a lot of times those things may be incongruent, especially in the beginning. And you probably haven't heard this story, but I've told this story a lot on the No Cap Recap. When I decided to go to college, I still had one foot in both worlds, right? I knew I needed to go to college. I wanted the education. I wanted to be able to have a high paying job, right? I wanted financial security. What was I willing to do? I was willing to go to college. What I wasn't willing to do was not go to my brother's house and drink and play dominoes and gamble and party, right? Yeah. I wanted both. And so that was incongruent with what I said I wanted.
Right.
And it took time because I couldn't do it cold turkey.
Right.
But over time, more assignments. Got to practice for got to study for finals, right? Things are getting harder, right? And that can be very difficult for a lot of people that some things come easy to them.
Okay.
And so they can just catch on to it, right? Numbers are nice for me. But then when it gets hard, all of a sudden, we might not necessarily want to put the work in. We have to really study, read things over, go and seek other assistance, right?
Well, the key element I think that you want to recognize, and this is I think you need to recognize, this is the I didn't know that I didn't know that I didn't know. As you begin to know, you put more emphasis on what you were trying to do than on what emphasis is what you were doing. So you get a gradual drift toward the place you're going because you begin to deem it more important than what you were doing before.
Well, and that's exactly what happened in my life, right? So I would have to leave because I had a test the next day, right? And I got to go home and I got to study for this test. So I got to leave earlier. Oh, man, it's midterms. I got to leave earlier. Oh, it's finals. Oh, I got to leave earlier, right? And so, my next schedule, my classes are different. I can't be here on Thursday and Tuesday. And so slowly but surely, right? Because I was looking at the piece of paper and more, when I looked down, I was doing what I said I wanted, right? What I wanted to do now was what I was also willing to do. And then I started to seek success. And what was powerful for me is it changed in my mind my own, because it became priority. I wasn't two-minded, right? I didn't care to have a foot in both worlds. I didn't have this FOMO, which is what people have today. The fear of missing out.
Okay.
I wasn't missing out on anything over there, right? I mean, the games, the video games, and the barbecue and the party, that's always going to be there.
Correct.
And it'll still be there on a Saturday or a Sunday or on a holiday. That's always there. This ain't always going to be there.
Right.
And now I'm congruent with what I say I want and what I'm actually doing. And as I'm doing that, then I'm starting to see success. And it makes it easier because now that question, what are you going to do? I'm doing it.
Correct.
Right? So I'm doing it. And then I find myself where I'm at today. So I'm hoping that could be helpful for folks to apply to their own lives.
Correct.
From a secular standpoint in what it is that you're trying to achieve that you might find yourself struggling with. It may be saving money, financial literacy. It may be, participating and volunteering in the community, right? You see things in the community like, oh, this is
Right.
wrong, this is bad. Someone needs to do something. Well, why not you? Are you going to stop talking, complaining about it and start doing something about
Right.
it, right? You want it to change. What are you willing to do? So,
Right.
whatever those examples are, you know, what are you going to do? Ask yourself those questions. So, I thought this sermon was really powerful, and I want to switch into the second part of it,
Okay.
which, again, you talked about this role modeling,
Correct.
right? And you said, people they see you.
Oh, they see you.
Again, that Johari
Yeah,
window,
oh, they see you,
right?
bro. They see you.
What people see, God sees you too, and I'm sure you'll talk about that when I pass it off to you.
Okay.
But with the role modeling piece, I was telling Brother D that when I was driving him. Again, I'm not listening to the sermon because
Right.
he and I are having a conversation, and I was talking about role modeling, and I was talking about Cardi B and WAP and Jay Z and all the things that we see, all these trappings, selling drugs and selling your body and all
Mm-hmm.
the things that people feel like they have to do because they don't have any choices and they don't have any options.
Right.
And what I was sharing with them, I said, while those things are true, right? People's experiences and opportunities can be limited based on you don't get to choose where you're born,
Where they standing at.
right? There are people that still made it out
Correct.
to become that athlete, to become that musician, to become that
Right.
doctor, to become that
Right.
you know uh, that person that made an average salary, took care of their family,
Mm-hmm.
right, and everything was good. And so, it doesn't have to be, well, that's the rule. That's the exception,
Right.
that it's drugs or it's selling your body or whatever the case may be. And so we have to flip it on its side. So we can say, oh, it's racism, it's Jim Crow, it's this, it's that. Those are all factors that do influence that. But when you have knowledge, then at some point you have to decide that I'm going to do something different, right?
Correct.
And now you have to say, okay, this is what the situation is. I wasn't the order of this situation. Some things you are.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the order of the situation. This is where I find myself. I can't, can't choose the hand I was dealt.
Right.
I got to work with the hand I was dealt.
Right.
And I'm going to go forward with that. And then I'm going to do the best that I can to get to where I want to get to.
Correct.
Right. And I know that I want to live a certain way. So I can live a life of decadence and not have money problems, but I might have prison problems.
Right.
Right. Because I'm living fast. Right. I might be living dangerously. People might want to come take my life because I'm out in the street. So I might rather live poor and work minimum wage jobs, but being able to put my head down at night, right? To have my kids look at me and be proud of me, right? Because I got up and I did what I needed to do, right? And I could be, they could be proud of their father or their mother. And so that role modeling is important. And what I was telling Brother D was, you know, these youth are going to watch you whether you want to be watched or not.
Right.
Other adults are going to watch you whether you want to be watched or not. Charles Barkley tried to say back in the day, I'm not a role
Right.
model. You brought that up,
Right.
right? Like it doesn't matter if you want to be a role model or
Right.
not. Folks are watching you,
Right.
right?
And if
So-
they're watching you,
Yeah,
they're using you for an example.
absolutely.
And if they're using you for example, good, bad, or ugly.
So in that,
Okay.
what does God see? What do strangers see? What do people you know see? And what do you see? Now, I'm going to give it to you and kind of talk about the role modeling aspect when you were giving your preached word today in regards to role modeling and 2 Corinthians 3, 1 through 6, 1 through 5.
I see that there's some questions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Hank, my personal knowledge of you, you've been here for this amount of time and you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And you know what I can say to that? It's true. However, comma, uh, my issue, uh, my issue became clear because I had a different purpose at the time, and I fulfilled my purpose. Once my purpose had been fulfilled, I moved to the next spot in my life. 3 years ago, my purpose was removed. At that beginning of the 3 years ago, I had now to begin a new me. But here's a key element: the real me was still what I had up to 3 years ago. So, am I really beginning a new me, or just beginning a new portion of the journey? And that's what I had to come to grips with. I didn't change. The responsibility I had changed because no longer was it stuck here. It was open to whoever. So God saw that He wanted me to move away from where I was closed in. That's why Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, when He said to Abrams, get thee from among thy kindred. He was saying, get yourself from here because the influences that your kindred had on you ain't what I want you to have.
Ooh, boy. All right, let me. You done triggered me now,
Yeah.
right?
That's
a
what he
big
said.
one.
That's what he said.
But that's a huge one.
But that's what he
right?
said.
Birds of a feather flock together, right?
Leave him alone.
You want to make this change, but you're still going to the club. You want to make this change, but you're still in the bar. You want to make this change, but you're still. I couldn't successfully make that change until I was able to
Drop.
right.
Let
And again,
him
it
go.
wasn't cold turkey, like you said.
Yeah.
Now I'll go ahead and use your. I didn't know what I didn't know. What I didn't know. What I didn't know. Right.
Now you understand what you know.
But when I start on that path, and I was telling Brother D, I was like, it's the daily, right? I wake up today and I want to be on mission.
Right.
I wake up today and I want to be on mission.
Right.
That's the cliche, the one foot in front of the other. And when I tell
trudging along but going,
and
slow but steady.
Get focused on the journey. And when I tell folks, we have these conversations, I say, all right, now what I want you to do is just stand here with me. Now look back. Look at how far you came. Right? And they're able to say, well, when I was depressed, I was suicidal, I was lost, I had no direction. I finished 2 quarters in school. I'm going to mental health. I got, it's phenomenal. When I'm able to,
I was just going wherever the wind took me.
But I love when I can turn back, right? And then that's that fuel to keep going. Because there's going to be rocks. There's going to be sand. There's going to be pitfalls. There's going to be snakes.
I'm going to fall. I'm going to stumble. I'm going to hurt my toe.
But they need that, especially when they're at a low point.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, stop. Look at all those footprints. Look how far you came. You can do this. You got it in this.
Oh, I got one to add to your footprint.
Go ahead.
The brother said, there were times that I only saw one set.
Say it again.
The brother said, there were times I only saw one set. Now here's a key part to this. Was the brother saved then? We don't know. But we do know that God carried him.
Right.
And at that one point where there was only one set of footprints, the person was being carried.
Yeah.
Wasn't strong enough to stand on their own. It was still moving forward.
There you go.
Look, still moving forward. So what God sees is that that's my child. I'm going to carry him or her while they can't walk on their own till I can get them some food and then get some nourishment in their body and they can build strong bones so they can stand up.
And we don't see that, right? I think if Brother D was here now, right, the things that he was saying to me is that he didn't know that we would have that conversation today.
He didn't know that he didn't know.
But when he walked into work, he was floating into work. He was so jazzed up, right? But so what does God see and how does he carry you? We might not see the things that he's putting in our place, right, to help us on our journey.
That's why I say everything that happened to me happened to make me BETTER, not BITTER. Because if I'm not careful, I will become BITTER.
Well, but a lot of people start off bitter, right? They lament on their situation. I shouldn't be in this situation. Man, I made all these mistakes. I'm too old. It's like, no, you're not too old, right? The thing is that you can get it early, but if you can't handle it, you're just going to lose it or waste it anyway. So you have to be in a space where you can receive it and then make use of it. I can give it to you now, but what you going to do with it? You see so many lottery winners that are broke in 2 years, right? They gave it to you, but see, you weren't prepared to receive that amount of money.
Thank you.
So you blew it, right?
Thank you.
So we talked about what God sees. What do strangers see? And I think that's important. And I'll use an example. When you have, you go to the gym,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're working out.
Okay.
What do those folks see around you when you're at the gym, right? They see that you're
They'll see that a lot of them see that I come in with a de, decapitated physical abnormality.
what? You just said decapitated, cut off the head.
Yeah, because let's
So
say
make it plain for us.
I come in at 275 pounds on a 5'8" frame.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 275 pounds on a 5'8" frame is fat,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't say it ain't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but does fat have to mean I'm not in shape? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
So then, if I'm coming in at 275 pounds, am I coming in to reduce my exterior, or I'm coming in to improve my stamina?
Well, what do they see?
Well, all they see now is they think, because of the way I go and begin my exercise program, that I'm there to reduce my mass.
Okay, so that's fine. They so what you're saying is they see that you're in working on yourself, whatever
Correct.
that is.
Whatever
they don't
that
need
is.
to know the
Right.
specific goal, right?
Right.
I could be toning, I could be building muscle, I could
Right.
be, it could be whatever.
Right.
So that's what strangers see. What do your friends and acquaintances see? People that you know see?
Most of them tell me I see somebody who needs to be in a "I love you" jacket.
No. If you're going to the gym 3 times a week, what
Most
do they see?
most of them see that I need to be in a "I love you" jacket because I'm crazy to think that just going to the gym is going to solve my problem. It Going to the gym is exercise, right?
That's what we're
No,
talking
no,
about.
no,
We're not
no.
talking about anything
No,
outside
hold
of that.
on, hold on. It's two pieces to the going to the gym. It's diet and exercise. See, I can get the exercise.
Okay, well, let's not go there. Right?
Okay.
Because the people that can't see you don't know if you're dieting or not.
Okay.
Right? We're just looking
Okay.
at you're getting too meta there.
Oh, okay,
You
but
know?
I was the reason why I went down that rabbit hole is because I had to come to the same revelation.
I know, but
Okay.
we're not talking about you now. We're
Okay.
talking about what people around you see. If they
Okay.
see that you're committed and you're going to the gym 3 to 5 times a week, what are they seeing? You talked about what the strangers see.
I hope they see somebody serious about changing.
Okay, so
That's what
it.
I hope.
Okay, so just stop there, right? So we're looking at the Johari window,
Okay.
right? And we talked about what God sees,
Right.
right? We talk about what these strangers see,
Right.
with you being in the gym 3 to 5 times a
Right.
week. We know what your people that know you,
Correct.
that may care about you. We know what they see. They see
Right.
that you're committed.
They see a positive.
Right? They see a positive. What do you see?
I see an attempt to become what I think I am. Not what I project, but what I believe is the real me.
What's the real you?
Somewhere down the line, I know what I didn't know that I didn't know that I didn't know.
Nope, give me it straight.
I know that last week when I wrote a column, I have become a minister of the Word of God.
Okay, now give it to me in the exercise.
Now,
analogy.
to do that, I have to present that everywhere I go.
Okay.
I can't hide. I can't hide that figure. Wherever I go, I don't have to preach to the people screaming from the housetop. But when I'm talking to someone, I'm gonna steer them in that direction in my conversation.
Okay.
I'm not gonna go to and beat them across the head with the Bible as a Bible thumper.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna direct my words where that you'll know I was shooting at you,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can receive the shots. You go, okay, that ain't nothing, ain't too bad for me to look at. Now I can check that out. Once you make the conscious decision that this is who you say you are, this is who you accept yourself to be, you then begin to become that in everything you do.
Okay. So then what you're saying then is in the exercise analogy, what you see is someone that is doing what they wanted to do
Correct.
and what they're willing to do
Right.
and what they are doing.
Correct.
So all things are incongruent.
All things
in agreement.
Right.
All right.
Because that's where you have to be. Until you get there, you're just playing.
And while you're doing those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's going to take a while.
It's going to take a while.
Put more weight,
Yeah.
so you can bench more.
Right.
going to take a while for you to build that muscle. It's going to take a while for you to lose that weight.
Right.
But if you're doing that
It'll
on a
happen.
consistent basis,
It'll happen.
then you're going to see the result from it,
Right.
right? So when I start on this journey of going to college or starting a business or researching something that I want to do new, right? As I'm doing that on a daily basis, I'm going to get more proficient in it, right? I'm going to gain more knowledge, skills, and abilities that I can apply to whatever it is that I'm trying to work on.
You're going to become what you said you were.
I like it.
Because if you until then, you're just playing with yourself. Sorry, this all it is. You're not doing that.
So what I would like folks to do is take a look at something that you have going on in your life.
Okay.
Whether it's your relationship with God or if it's something secular, a goal that you have. What are the things you don't want the three above for you to see? What don't you want God to see? God sees it all, but it doesn't stop us from doing some stuff that God don't want us to see. That He's not pleased with. What do you not want strangers to see? That it goes back to your videotape analogy, right? And what do you want people that you know that you don't want them to see? Ask yourself those three things.
I don't want them to see the hidden me that I realize that I exist.
The hidden you that what?
That I realize exists. It's not hidden to me. It's hidden to them.
It's hidden to them.
At least that's what I'm thinking. That's my imagination. They may actually see it. I don't know that.
Well, let's not assume that. Just assume that they don't know. What do you not want them to see?
I don't want them to see the part of me that I haven't told everybody else, that only I know of me. The unfortunate part is that part of me, God knows always, regardless of whether I want them to see it or not.
Right. That goes without saying.
Right.
But what are those things? So can you do this exercise in regards to your collar? Right. So you decided this week you weren't going to wear the collar. So what did you not want God to see in that?
Well, I did not wear the collar because I didn't want to wear a collar. I wanted to dress up, at least wear the shirt and tie to show that I'm elevating the opportunity when I come to speak. It's not that I can't wear the denim shirt or the T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I ought to at least wear the collar shirt, even if I don't have a tie.
Gotcha. Okay. So what did you want strangers to see? So folks that came in, it was their first time in church. Folks who were tuning in for the first time online. What did you not want them to see from last week with the collar and now this week when you're in knowledge now that you're like, I don't need to wear that collar? What did you not want them to see?
I didn't want them to see the collar and be captivated by the collar only. I wanted them to see that the person with the collar on is still the same person without the collar on.
Ooh.
See, I wanted to see the same people,
mm-hmm.
but I wanted to see them in a different light, in a different. I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole of the 10 blind men checking the elephant.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted them to be in a different spot to see the same thing.
Okay.
Because the 10 blind people could only see what they could feel. So I wanted to change the picture, the image that they had in their mind.
Because they would be more likely to see it in themselves. Otherwise, I have to have a collar in order to have that relationship with God.
Correct.
Woo, boy, that's a...
Yeah.
Go ahead, drop the mic. We don't need to talk about the rest.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead and skip off that. There's nothing else to say there. What are you refusing to see in yourself? It's our last question. From the collar to now, what were you refusing to see in yourself? Was it the fact that you didn't need to have that collar, that you already were living congruently and people could see that in you?
No, I didn't see myself as God saw me. My image of me was less than God's image of me. And my image of me was that I didn't deserve what the collar said. It's not that I couldn't do what the collar said. I didn't deserve. So the imagery of me was not the imagery that God had of me. So we had a disconnect between what God saw me as and what I saw myself as. So I couldn't say I'm working for God because the picture I saw of me didn't look like what God showed me. And I have to begin to see myself as God see me.
Wow.
Not as the people who know me,
Mm-hmm.
not as the people who've seen me, but as God has revealed to me. Um, I'm minded of Isaiah, I think the sixth chapter, where he said, in the day that King Uzziah died, he saw the Lord in his train come up on him while he was in the temple. And as he recognized that it was God, he said to himself, "Oh, what a wretched man that I am. I'm a man of unclean lips." He said his speech wasn't godly, and he had to recognize he had fallen short. When he saw the real God, he said, like Paul, who can deliver me?
Yeah.
Oh, wretched man that I am. What I'm going to do? Look, I'm going to hell, and I don't want to go. That's what he saw. So yeah, that's what. Sometimes we don't see ourselves as God sees us.
Well, I appreciate you going through that exercise, and I hope that's helpful to folks out there. And I love the kind of continuation from last week. With the Johari window and pulling that in to both of the preached word this week and last week. Uh, you've got four quadrants in your life,
Right.
and there are some things that you need to do if you're going to make some changes and achieve goals that you set for yourself.
Right.
And number one is you have to realize that you have a challenge, or you have a challenge, and then you got to recognize that you have that challenge and make a decision that you want to do something about it. You need to go ahead and get your advisors. You need to analyze and make a decision, and then that's going to loop back on itself, because you should always check back and make sure that you're on the path, because you're always going to need to tweak things as you go along. And in that, you know, Minister Hank talked about, what if God was looking at your life as a video, which, I mean, he knows all, so he does.
Right.
But we can look at that in regards to other people, right? What do people see in us? What people don't see in us? What we don't see in ourselves, our blind spots, and what nobody knows, what we still have yet to discover ourselves. And a lot of that is untapped potential, right? I was telling Brother D, again, that whole thing with calling each other king and queen. Um, if you are going to put a royalty title on yourself, then you need to be congruent in that title. But what areas are you falling short in? You need to acknowledge that, take a look at it. What are you wanting to do? And a lot of times, what you're wanting to do is very different from what you're willing to do. And then ask yourself, well, if you're willing to do it, are you doing it, and are you doing it consistently? And if you answer those questions and you find that when you look at that piece of paper and you were doing what you said you wanted to do and what you're willing to do, you're going to start to see those results, and you will improve in becoming a better basketball player, becoming a better business person, becoming a better father, becoming a better mother, becoming a better, whatever it is, right? You're going to make those gains, improving your relationship with God, whatever those things are.
One last comment.
Hold on, I'm almost done.
Okay.
I'll let you jump in there. The role modeling piece of it, whether or not you want to be a role model, people are watching you. Youth are watching you. Your colleagues are watching you. Strangers are watching you. So how you carry yourself, how you behave is going to project. And if you're saying that you're a man of the cloth because you were wearing the cloth,
Right.
but then when you're not here in this body, in this building,
Right.
in that capacity, do they still see the man in the cloth
Hey.
when you got a pair of sweats on and you're
Come
walking
on.
through Walmart?
Come on.
And that works for all things, right?
Right.
If you're a college student, do they see a college student?
Right.
Do they see a high school student? Do they see a person working on their craft? Do they see them working at becoming the best basketball player, the best football player, the best musician, the best whatever it is that you're trying to do? You'll have parents that will say, well, I mean, if you're going to be a drug dealer, just be the best drug dealer you can be. Like that phraseology, but the point of it is be the best that you can be at what it is that you're going to do. So, and what do you see? What do you see? you do need to do that analysis. Go ahead and give your summary there.
There's a concept that we began to talk to ourselves in the mid 1900s, and that concept was that we were royalty, and we began to talk about royalty to uplift ourselves because no one on the face of the earth would lift up black folks, and I'm gonna say it just the way it is: black folks, African Americans, Negroes, whichever one of the words you want to use. And we began that in the late 50s, early 60s to help us learn how to deal with the concept that Mr. Brown used to say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. This is Black History Month. So it's a very good analogy you're using
Mhm.
because it was used to inspire us to stop talking this here and that there and nothing and a tin and two black sides upside down. It was designed to help us want to improve our linguistical components. It was designed to help us improve with, no, I'm not going to the club no more. I'm not going down to the juke joint just so I can get a buzz on. It was to tell us that the slavery components had beat us down so far we couldn't see ourselves as nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So it became the vision to repaint the image. That's why we talk about Mansa Musa. Do you know who Mansa Musa is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we talk about because the boy was bad.
Right.
And then we talk about when you want to take it to the Bible, Solomon was darker than you, and he was David's son.
Mm.
Now Bathsheba, she's a black woman. We don't talk like that.
Well, if you come to Bible study, you get to hear all about it. That's 10 a.m. on Saturdays. Come to Bible study. We will talk about it. That's what I'm talking about. Man, I know we're over a little bit, got lost in the sauce, but there's a lot to unpack in this. Um, so I appreciate another powerful hour and 20 minutes. Like I said,
Hey,
we
well,
went a little
thank you.
bit over,
Hey,
but I think it was well worth it. Thank you for your preach word this week,
so we want to
and
thank God
thank God.
because without Him, I couldn't do nothing.
All right, there
I'm
you
not
go.
saying that it's cliches. I'm just being honest with you. Um, at some point, you have to recognize the God factor,
Mm,
and if you don't recognize the God factor, you would be perceiving that I'm justified because I'm intellectual. My name is Apollos. I can speak good. And wrong.
I'll say as we wrap,
Hmm.
something interesting has been happening in the last several months for
Okay.
me, because I've been bumping into a bunch of strangers. The last time was I think it was last Friday,
Okay.
Friday night. I'm in SARS, and it's late. It's about midnight,
Okay.
right? And I'm doing some shopping, and I'm dressed as I normally am, and more, I'm gonna. Oh, are you a minister? What church? What church are you at?
You see what I'm talking about? The collar.
Hmm.
See, you don't need the collar. When they see you dressed, for whatever reason, they think, oh, he's nice and clean cut. Da 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 da.
But are you going to court, right? Because you get that pejorative. You know what I'm
Hey,
saying?
hey,
I could be a business person.
right,
I don't have to be tied to
right.
a church body, especially in a grocery store at midnight, right?
But that's the first
But
thing.
that's what they see.
Right.
So when you're looking at that Johari window, I need to go back and reflect and say, hey, what's happened in my life where outsiders are starting to perceive me that way? Because I don't think I've done anything different. So what is it?
Well,
What's my blind spot?
let me give you something that somebody have said and we don't talk about. Moses had to walk around with a sack over his head after he spent 40 days in the cliff talking to God.
Mm.
Research it. We'll talk about it next Saturday at 10 o'clock.
All right. All right. So if you want to know why Moses had a sack on his head for 40 days after he came down, was that Mount Sinai?
Yes, sir.
Then
It wasn't for 40 days. It was after
after
he spent
after he
40 days.
spent the 40 days, you're gonna want to tune in. Well,
Yeah.
you want to come down to 40.
Yes, sir.
Seriously.
I'm sorry.
Man, Rev, it's like you like you're sitting right next to me. Y'all do the same thing. Like, What is it? Do you like chicken too? Oh, see, that would just be a stereotypical. You know, preachers like fried chicken.
With a little ketchup on it.
Oh, a little
And
ketchup on it.
And some hot sauce.
You know what? I actually like chicken with ketchup.
Oh,
All right,
I'm
we're
sorry.
going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, but it's worth it. Just bring the chicken.
I'm telling you, it's like sitting next to the rail. All right, y'all. We appreciate you tuning in. Lord willing, we will be here next Saturday for the No Cap recap. For Minister Hank, I'm Marwan Cameron. This is the No Cap recap. This is the conduit. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Go ahead and kill that stream, AJ.